Hi, welcome back to Poor Man's Barbecue. Today we're going to be making a smoked meatloaf. And I'm going to be taking my old truck here, I call her Old Blue, old F-250. We're going to be driving up to the supermarket here and we're going to buy our ingredients. Everything that I use when I smoke my foods, I typically buy at the local grocery store. I don't go to meat suppliers or butchers or things like that. I don't have that kind of money. So what I want to do is I want to do things that are going to be cost effective for me and they're going to feed me and my family for, 3 days. And anyways, so to make a meatloaf today, it's probably really only going to cost us, with all the ingredients I have to buy, including about 3 pounds of beef, eggs, some other things. We're looking at it. It'll probably cost me between $20 and $30. And that's a great value for a meal that you're going to have for dinner maybe 2 or 3 times this week. We typically like to cook a large meal on Sundays and we'll eat at it for several days. Sometimes we'll make it all the way into Wednesday with the same meal. Sometimes you get really sick of it, sometimes you don't. But we both love meatloaf, my wife and I. My daughter, sometimes she likes it, sometimes she doesn't. But at any rate, let's head over to the grocery store and we're going to get ourselves our ingredients. So we made it back from the grocery store and I have got my foods here. So what I bought today at the store for this was I bought us some ground beef, I bought bacon. I was out of paprika, so I had to buy some paprika. I got a dozen eggs, which I'm going to eat during the week anyways. And I got some potatoes, which I'm going to make as a side. I'll put them into the smoker for about half an hour, toss them in some olive oil, and then just finish them off in the oven so they come out nice and crispy. Little quick stuff on the economics. So there are some people out there who have some concerns about how expensive smoking can be. And yeah, the cost can sometimes run away from you. A rack of ribs these days for a St. Louis cut is anywhere from $13 to $17 for a rack. Right now, I actually checked when I was at the store. Brisket is right now selling for $17.95 a pound. So that's, yeah, it is expensive. Those are definitely foods that I love. My absolute favorite food to do in the smoker is ribs. And I've been cooking ribs in the smoker now for over 20 years. And it is by far my favorite food. I do sometimes cook them. I'll do them, 5 or 6 times a year. I don't do them too often because honestly, I just don't want to get sick of them. But they are kind of expensive. And it doesn't really go that far. You can get, one rack of ribs is enough for really 2 people to make it a meal. I always buy the St. Louis cut. But today, to keep things more economical, and because we haven't had this probably in about 6 or 7 months, I want to smoke a meatloaf. So let me give you the breakdown on what this costs the average person. So I got roughly about 4 pounds of ground beef. I bought 3 packages. They were each 1.3 pounds, roughly. So that came out to $17.83. The bacon was $5.99. Paprika was $6.99 and the eggs were $2.99. The potatoes were $3.49. That gave us a total here of $37.22. I figure on 3 meals, tonight, tomorrow night, and Tuesday night, or tonight, and then a couple of nights during the week. We'll just throw it in the fridge and pull it out, heat it in the microwave as needed. And this should feed about 4 people for 3 nights during the week. So if you divide the $37.22 by 3 meals, that gives you $12.41 per meal. And then if you're in a family similar to mine, I have 4 people in my family. The breakdown per meal per person is $3.11. That's just good economics. It's cheap. and then super affordable. You know, I'm not always trying to do the most affordable foods, but you know, economics does come into play. So I like using my smoker, and I do use it quite a bit. In the really cold winter months, I don't really use it so much, and in the really hot heat of the summer, I also don't use it so much. It's just uncomfortable to be outside dealing with tending a fire. But today we're going to do this smoked meatloaf, and let's get going on this. So I've already gone ahead and I've already made my rub that I'm going to put on the meatloaf. And this is the same rub I would use for pork. It's brown sugar, paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, and a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper and some cumin. I'm also going to use today a traditional mop. So if you watched my video last week, I demonstrated what a mop was and how I'm going to be using it. I'm using that pretty much exact same recipe today. So what we've done already is I've gone ahead and I've mixed those both up, and they're ready to go. So what we're going to do today is we're going to mix this meatloaf. So this is 3 packages of meatloaf. It's roughly 4 pounds. So the first thing we want to do is I am definitely going to glove up here, because this is some pretty messy stuff. So let's get these gloves on. Man, these gloves are tight. All right. Alright, so the first thing we're going to add in here is, let's get in some of these other ingredients. Meatloaf, I don't know who else does this, but I usually season them with Worcestershire sauce. So I'm going to do probably about, I don't know, I guess it would be about 2 tablespoons, maybe a little bit more. I don't want to overwhelm it, but I do want to give it a little bit. That's pretty good. I think that'll be enough. Alright, then next on that, I'm going to use a product here. Most times I make all my own rubs and seasonings and things like that. I love making them homemade. I can tweak them in the way that I want. But a number of years ago I was introduced to a particular spice mix that I really like. And this is, it's nothing fancy. It's made by McCormick, and it's their Montreal steak seasoning. And this has chunks of garlic in it, rock salt, pepper, onion, all kinds of good stuff. And this is a great seasoning. I love it with my burgers and things like that. Which is, for me, it's really strange because this is really one of the only pre-mixed spice mixes that I'll use ever. I like it. It's good. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add this in. We don't want to put too much because of the salt that's in here. If you put too much, you're just going to have nothing but a salty flavor. That's something I learned by accident. But let's go ahead and season this up a little bit with this. So for about the 4 pounds, I'm doing about a tablespoon and a half. I don't want to go much more than that. Now we also need breadcrumbs, and I'm sure I'll be adding more of these. And as far as the demand, you know, how much I'm putting in here, it's quite a bit, honestly. Probably close to a cup, maybe a little bit more. It's really, you know, we want to get a decent amount in there, but we don't want to overdo it. I'm going to leave that open because odds are I'm going to have to come back and put a little bit more. So now the other thing is we need a binder so this thing really kind of holds its form while it's smoking. And the best binder, of course, is eggs. So I'm just going to use a couple of large brown eggs here. So typically you're looking at, you should do 1 egg per pound. That's the recommended. You're going to see that in most recipes. Are going to tell you 1 egg per pound. I've got 4 pounds here. I'm really only going to use 3. I feel like if I use that 4th egg, it's just going to be super dense. And I'm not looking for a light, airy meatloaf, but I'm also not looking for one that's going to be super dense. So we're going to use 3 eggs. And it definitely helps to have a pretty large mixing bowl for this. You don't want to work out something too small. It's just going to go all over the place. It makes a mess. Alright, we got the eggs in. We've got all of our main ingredients here for this meatloaf. So now, gloves, we're going to mix this all together, and I always mix everything by hand. So we just come in here and we're squeezing it together, and we're trying to incorporate everything all together all at the same time. And I can tell already that I don't have enough breadcrumbs in this. It's awful wet. So, let's go ahead and we're going to add a little bit more breadcrumbs. And don't worry, this is a one-time use thing only. As you can see, I've got hamburger and egg all over my hands, but this will probably kill off this can anyways. And these are just regular, unseasoned golden breadcrumbs. You can use the Italian flavored breadcrumbs, or you can make your own. I just look for the convenience. So we'll get this mixed. And still, oh, look at that, a little bit of styrofoam. That must have been from the packaging for the beef. So what we're really looking for is we want to see it's kind of starting to look a little bit dry. Not, not dry, but not that soft and wet after the egg. Let's add a little bit more here, because still I need more. So I think now we've got probably close to a cup and a half breadcrumbs in here. And we're looking to be getting close to where I want to be. I think that last bit should pretty much do it. So let's get this alright. I think that looks pretty good. I might add just a hair more. Yeah, pretty much killed that off. So that was about a half a can that was in there. So now maybe a little bit less than half a can. So there's just a little bit left in there. But I think we've got this. That's stiffening up really the way I'm looking for. And this is kind of something you'll develop as you go on with your cooking. You're going to find that you'll just kind of know how things are after a while, how they're supposed to look, how they're supposed to feel. I've said for years that cooking and smoking, barbecue in particular, I don't go off of recipes, because my saying is with barbecue and smoked food, you really cook from the heart. So, I'll tweak things. I'll see recipes on shows, or I'll read a recipe and I tweak it to the way I want it. And when I say cooking from the heart, what I mean is that you're going to see it, you're going to understand it, you taste your foods as you're going, you develop a palate for it, and after a while you're not going to want to know that it's supposed to be a quarter teaspoon of this and 2 tablespoons of that and a half a cup of this. You're kind of going to wing it, because you're using your heart and how you feel about it, and it's going to give you I think it's going to give you a good result. That's how I cook. I cook with my heart, not so much with my head. Anyways, I got this about where I want it. Let me get these eggs out of the way. Now we're going to form this meatloaf. So forming the meatloaf, people will oftentimes put them in pans if they're going to be doing them in the oven. So we don't want that in the smoker. We just want exposed meat in the smoker, so that way we can get smoke on it. If it was in a pan or a bread pan or something like that, you've got 4, 5 sides of it that are going to be covered, and the only thing that's going to be exposed to the smoke would be the top. That's not really what I'm looking for. I want the whole thing to be exposed and to get that smoke. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this right out, and we'll put it on a cutting board here. Let me get this out of the way. And now we're just going to form it. And it's a meatloaf, so it doesn't have to be pretty. But we do want it to be a consistent shape. So kind of press it out. Pull your sides together, press it out some more. You don't want one side to be thinner than the other side, because you do want to be able to get that nice consistent temperature and cooking time throughout the whole thing. You don't want one half of it to be done before the other half is. Alright, so we're going to get that. That's pretty good. Now the other thing too is remember that this is going to shrink up a bit in the smoker. So, and I always buy, when I do this, or really any kind of burger, I get the 93% lean. And that way I don't get a lot of shrinkage, because it's mostly protein in here. We're not losing a ton of a ton of size from it evaporating out. All right, so that's pretty good. A little fat in the middle, let's kind of squeeze that out a little bit more. All right, there we go. I think we got that about a good size that I'm looking for. All right, so now another thing we're going to do is I'm going to give this just a very light coating of barbecue. Now you can use any store-bought brand you want. You can make your own. I do at times make my own barbecue sauces, although I tend to make more of like a Carolina style sauce, lots of vinegar. I don't care for the sweet sauces. I like more of a tangy and more heat. So there's one brand that came out, well, it's been out for a while now I guess, but one that I like quite a bit is the Stubbs. They have a few different ones. This is the original. I like the flavor of this. It reminds me of the kind of flavor you'd get on barbecue sauce that comes with like a roast beef sandwich. If you're from New England or the Boston area like I am, you'd be very familiar with roast beef sandwiches. They're like a regional hit, a super phenomenon. But this tastes a little bit like it. It's not sweet at all, but I'm only going to give this a light coating because this is essentially going to be a binder for my rub. So we're just going to put this over here. And again, not a ton. Just enough. Now we're just going to kind of spread that across. Get a nice little coverage with it. This is a little different from the ham where we use a ton of mustard. We don't have to go quite so heavy on this. So we've got a nice little coating. That's going to let my dry rub stick real nice to this. And it's also not going to really change the flavor of the meatloaf. So now we've got that. So what we want to do is we want to get on our dry rub. Now, I am ultimately going to cover this whole thing in bacon, which you'll see the step in a minute. And we don't want a ton of rub on here. And the reason for that is because it's going to be covered with bacon, the rub itself is not going to develop the bark. The bark is going to develop on the bacon. So if you put too much rub, it develops this kind of gritty sort of characteristic in your mouth as you're eating it. And that's because the rub, it's like wet flour, kind of, will be like, you know, like a good example of how it will come across. So I'm really just using this for flavor, and I'm just going to add a little bit. We're going to dust it with this. So we're not going to use a ton. So we're just going to come over this here, give it a little bit. Yeah, it's looking good. Just a little bit more. We don't need much more. So on a meatloaf, I don't really use a lot of a rub. That to me is plenty. So now we're going to add some bacon on this, and we're going to totally cover this in bacon 100% all the way. And for this, today I'm just going to use a maple flavored bacon that I bought at the supermarket. And this is actually even the store brand bacon. The funny thing is that I buy a lot of store brand stuff, and one thing that I really notice is that I like the store brand stuff quite a bit, and I think in a lot of cases it's actually better than the brand stuff, which, you know, I don't really understand. If I'm paying top dollar for brand, you think it'd be better, but a lot of times it's not. Alright, so let's get this wrapped up in bacon. So I do the ends, and I pull my bacon around like this, just to cover those ends, and I'm going to do the other side right now too. You're going to see that there's going to be a bunch of bacon kind of hanging off of the sides of this, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll trim that up. I don't want to have big loose ends of bacon kind of hanging out. I did have somebody once say I should just cut the whole thing in half and use the halves instead of using the whole pieces, but, you know, we all get stuck in our ways, don't we? Sometimes it's just a pain in the ass dealing with bacon. So now we're just going to start layering the bacon. And like I'm talking about is these little loose ends here. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there are little loose ends. And I'm going to trim all those off. I want to show you my, before I end this portion of the video, I want to show you a little bit about my thermometer that I've been using. I'm looking at it right now. I'm checking my smoker temperature. So I started the fire about 45 minutes ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And what I like to do is while the smoker is heating up, I really like to be able to come up here and get my prep work done if I haven't done it the night before. So I did not do it the night before, so now I have to do it today. Alright, we're getting there on our bacon here. Sometimes I overlap the bacon slices, sometimes I don't. This package doesn't seem like there's as many slices as I'd like. It's the normal weight, but usually I feel like there's usually about 15 slices. In this one, I counted them, there was only 11. But we'll see how it goes. So I got 3 inches left to cover up, and we'll see if we make it. Actually, there wasn't 11. How many are in here now? Did I miscount that? So I got 2 pieces left, and it looks like I've got just enough here. No, it was definitely more than 11. One was hidden. I got 1 spot left to cover, so let's cover that. Alright, now that is nicely covered. We're just going to kind of pat it in place. Now I've got a ton of stuff hanging off the edges of this, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that off. And today you've seen me using pretty much in all my other videos nothing but a little boning knife, but I'm going to use this French chef's knife today. My personal favorite is a Japanese chef knife, but that is dirty and in the dishwasher, so I didn't feel like cleaning it. So I'm going to use this 8-inch French chef knife. And again, it really helps if you keep your knives very sharp. It doesn't hurt to have a good stone to sharpen it on. I use the Diamond Tech stones. They're steel and diamond. They do an amazing job, and it really only takes a couple of passes to sharpen them. I do use steels in between sharpenings, but I do kind of sharpen probably every other time I use the knives. So let's go ahead and trim this excess off on this side, and then we're going to come back and trim the excess off on the other side. Now you can save this and use it for cooking or for eating or whatever it is you feel like doing with it. I mean, I love bacon, but I'm not going to save this. That's just going to go in the trash. Oops. A little sinewy. There we go. And I'll tell you what, there's no struggle like struggling to cut bacon with a dull knife. Alright, so that's all set. We're good to go. I'm just going to let this kind of come up a little bit more to room temperature. I've had the meat out now for probably about 40 minutes. And this is probably around 50 to 55 degrees now. And I could just take this and throw it right in the smoker today, right now. But the smoker's not up to temp. So we're going to leave this sitting for a little bit. I want to tell you quickly about the thermometers I use. So what I've found over the years is, you know, honestly, I started off with just the little thermometers that were on the doors of the smokers. Those things are useless. They are inaccurate. They're just garbage. Do not use them. Once I figured that out, which didn't take very long at all, I switched over to using an oven thermometer on the inside of the smoker to tell me the internal temperature of the smoker. And then once an hour when I would come out, I would use a meat thermometer, or traditional meat thermometer, to get my temperature on the interior of the meat. Problem with that is that left me guessing a lot of times as to, you know, what the internal temperature is at any given time. So what I've done is I've gone off, and now this is probably about the third different one I've bought, and I've bought 2 of these, and I really like these a lot. And it's this is the receiver for it, and this is going to show me my 2 different temperatures. So right here we've got, with the what the meat will be at, and that's telling me right now that it's 32 degrees out there. It's not 32 degrees, it's actually 25. It's just that that probe is not in the smoker, but it's hanging down below, kind of up against where the fire pit is. And so it's getting kind of a higher temperature. The next one down is the temperature of the inside of the smoke box. And that one right now is reading about 227. I'd like that to come up. I want to see it at about 250, so I'll end up going down there in a minute and checking and maybe putting some more wood in. Because today is cold, it's going to give me some grief with the smoker. I could insulate it, I could throw a blanket over it. There's a lot of things I can do, but I won't do any of them. I'll just fight with it, and we'll get it to where it needs to be. Once the coals have really developed, it should be easily maintained at about 250. And those coals should be ready for me probably in about half an hour. It's 11:30 now. I want to get this in around noon. This is a relatively quick smoke. Meatloafs go pretty fast. So this meatloaf here, about 4 pounds, is going to take me 3 to 4 hours of smoke time. Where it is only in the 20s today, it's probably going to be on the higher end of that. It'll probably be about 4 hours. Might even stretch to like 4 hours and 15 minutes. What we're shooting for on this is we want to get an internal temperature of 170 degrees. I know I'll get grief for that in the comments because everybody's going to say, no, beef needs to be 180 to be well done. And you're right. But this is going to be in the smoker for hours and hours and hours. And any bacteria or anything that's in this meat will be killed off because it's going to have a long cook time. So even if it's coming out of the smoker at a slightly lower temperature, it's still going to have the correct internal temperature, and it's going to be exposed to that temperature for long enough to kill off any kind of, germs or bacteria that are in here, which there probably are none, but you never know. It is ground beef after all. So we want to get this up to about 170. Once it hits 170, I'm happy with it. It'll be cooked thoroughly all the way through. You're not going to see any pink or anything like that. It'll be cooked thoroughly all the way through, but it'll be nice and juicy. So once the smoke's ready, I'll bring you down. We'll put this into the smoker. And that's about it for prep today. Thanks. All right, so we've got the meatloaf in, and I've got it on the center rack. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to insert a meat probe right into this, a thermometer. So let's go ahead and do that. My lines are all tangled up. Love that. Let's see here. So what I want to do is I'm going to put it right in the end. Sorry, my voice, I've got a bit of a cold. So let's put this right in the middle here, right down the end, and I'm going to put it all the way in. Let's see what we're reading here on the temperature on that. So there it is at 47 degrees. It's going to come up about 120 degrees or more. That's going to take me probably about 3 to 4 hours, maybe 4 hours and 15 minutes. It's cold today. 27 degrees right now, so it is going to take a little bit longer. Let's go ahead and close this up. I'll bring you back down here in the first hour. We're going to mop it. I'm going to show you how we mop, and then after that, you'll probably, the next time you'll see it will be when it's being brought in. All right, guys. Well, we're an hour into the smoker, and I'm going to open this up. Let's take a look. We're going to mop the meat. I'm going to show you how to use the mop that I made last week in the video I made, and let's take a look and see how it looks. It's been an hour. Well, it is looking good. We're getting some nice color on here. Looks good to me. I like the way it's coming out so far. Temperature's been pretty good. We're 105 on the meatloaf. The 187 is not accurate because I just opened it up. We've been running about 255. So I've got my mop here. And no, it wasn't inside the smoker. I just put it there. One of these days I'm going to build a table for out here to be able to put all my things on, but I'm going to keep this inside anyways because I want to keep this warm. I do heat it up a little bit before I bring it out. You really don't want to put a cold mop on your meat. It lowers the temperature of your meat a little bit, not a terrible amount, but I prefer to use a warm mop. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this on. So we want to get that nice, soak up some good juices here, and we're just going to dab it all over. And I do go back and forth between using an actual mop like this and using a spray bottle. I rarely use basters. I did the other week when we made that ham, but that was just because I wanted to use the juices that the ham was putting out. You know, a lot of that fat rendering and the juices coming out of the ham. I did use a baster for that. In that case, I think it's better. But otherwise, I'll almost always use a mop. So we just want to make sure we're getting this covered real nice. This brown sugar in this mop mix is going to help really get a nice caramelizing on here. I love that color. It's going to actually darken up a lot, and you know, it's going to be at the point where people are going to be like, oh my god, it's burned. It's not. It's just the bark that builds up on it. The bacon on here, it's kind of a weird one. I use the bacon basically just for the fats in the bacon to get down into the meat. It is a 93% lean ground beef I'm using, so there's not a lot of fat in it. And the bacon, when it renders and the fat from the bacon sinks into the meat, does help it stay nice and moist and juicy. But we've also got our pan of water down the bottom here, and I filled this up a little while ago, and you can see it's just kind of steaming away, and that's what it'll do for the whole smoke. Anyways, there it is at an hour, nicely based, nicely mopped rather, and we're going to close this back up, and I'll come back out here in an hour and check it again. You guys will probably see this the next time when I go to bring it inside, unless I like the way it looks at the next point. And at that point, then I'll show it to you. See you in a few minutes. In case you guys are wondering about the toe tapping on the floor in my videos, that's Loose, my little French bulldog here. He is my assistant pit master, and he is nothing but trouble. All right, so we're at hour 2. I'm down here at the smoker, and I'm getting ready to open it up. Smells good, I'll tell you that much. Temperatures seem good. Meat is right now, we're at 154 on the meat. So Meatloaf has probably about another hour and a half to go. Like I had said, about 3 to 4 hours. I did think it would run a little longer today because it's so cold outside, but apparently that's not the case. So we should be right on time with this. We'll be finishing up probably about another hour to hour and a half. So I'm gonna open this up, I'm gonna mop the meat, we're gonna stoke the wood, and then I'm gonna go back upstairs where it's nice and warm and wait for my timer to go off. All right, so here we are. This is how it looks after 2 hours. We're getting nice smoke on here. I love that color, like deep mahogany. It is gonna darken up a little bit more than that. It'll probably be maybe 1 or 2 shades darker by the time it's done. That bacon is rendering out really nicely, and we're gonna have some really nice bacon flavor in this meatloaf. Let's go ahead and mop this, and then I'll check the firebox. So we're gonna leave this. This is the same mop we were using earlier, and no, it was not in the smoker. I had it inside, keeping it warm. So we're just gonna add that on there again, just like I did the first time. Yeah, that is just looking fantastic. I can't wait to eat this. It's funny because I get so sick of meatloaf. You know, we went through a phase where we were making this an awful lot, and by the end of that, I was just tired of it. And I haven't made a meatloaf here, I don't know, 6 or 7 months anyways, since the end of last summer, I would say. And so I'm actually really looking forward to this tonight. But I don't think I'll make it again for a while. You know, I kind of got so burnt out on it. I don't want that to happen again. It is delicious. It is absolutely delicious. All right. Well, I'm just going to close this up. I'm going to check the fire, and I'll bring you guys back when she's all done. There's Zeus again. Follow me everywhere I go. He's never not with me. Little guy. He is great company. All right, so here we are. This meatloaf is done. Look at that. Isn't that delicious looking? Oh, you can see the bacon. This is what I was talking about with the bacon, how it kind of turns real dark like that. And I've had so many people say, oh, it's burned. No, that's just from the smoke. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off, bring it upstairs. I'm going to let this rest for at least 15 minutes. But we're making potatoes right now. The wife's making some mashed potatoes on the oven. So those won't be ready, I don't know, it'll be half an hour anyways before that's ready. So we'll probably eat this in about half an hour, 45 minutes or so. And thanks for joining me on this beautiful Sunday, even though it is a little bit cold. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I hope I see you again on my next one.